All right, it's 6:01 and I'll call the meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Good evening, everyone. First order of business is an approval of the agenda. We do need to make one amendment and remove the outdoor classroom discussion under unfinished business. Actually cannot make it tonight. So with that change, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Also move.
Motion by George. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. General public comment. Is there anyone tonight who wants to speak? Mary Beth?
Hello again. I'll just make this quick. I was talking to a few parents last night and this morning, and an idea came about that we were all kind of expecting at least a small tax increase, as well as maybe swallowing some cuts. So since that tax increase that we were kind of thinking was going to happen this year doesn't look like it's going to happen, thankfully, we had an idea of maybe proposing an idea that there perhaps could be a 2% raise in the taxes this year. We could then bank that money and use it next year if there's an ability to do that. I know that might take another vote or it may take a ballot measure, but I was just wondering if we're having these conversations in anticipation of having less of a surplus next and more of a cost and the raise to keep everything going, if that would be an option to kind of pad our coffers a little bit this year with a small increase, and then hopefully we don't need it. If we do need it, that's fine. I know normally that any surpluses would go towards decreasing the taxes, or maybe that has been proposed in the past, but just a couple of people had brought that up, and I just wanted to bring that to the board.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. All right. If there's no other public comment, move on to consent agenda. We'll be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Did anyone have any questions about the contract recommendations, warrants, or minutes? We can pull those out of the consent agenda and discuss and approve those separately. All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by George. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Superintendent.
I just had, before we get much further,
Yeah.
all of us online are seeing a bunch of empty chairs, so we can't see anybody that's in the room. So if there's no public there, if we could turn the computer around or something.
I was wondering why no one was waving to me when I would wave. Thanks, Cara. Can't make it up.
I guess
Okay.
we do have a quorum.
Okay, I lost my train of thought. Thanks. All right, superintendent's report.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to report tonight. The time between December and January really is getting budgets prepared, start prepping for our informational annual meetings, get the warnings ready to go, things along those lines. So it's busy time for us just in preparation for March. Kind of where we're at. So the one, I have said this before, I just want to just remind everyone that the strategic plan meeting has been pushed back till to March. And so I suppose February just to allow a little more time for the writing team to gain input and as well as to craft some goals, some directives there. So
Any questions for Superintendent? All right. We'll move on to finance. Okay, so you have the budget in front of you, the fourth draft we're looking at tonight. At this time, we have all of the major components of the budget known to us today. The only one, which is a variable, is the yield, but we don't typically have a firm number on that until after town meeting day. Since the last draft, there's only been one change to the actual budget, and that was the updating of the vocational numbers. So for the students that go to Stafford, as of the last draft, we still had that in at last year's amounts because we were waiting for the sixth semester average from the state. As of today, I still have not received the sixth semester average from the state, but I am using the sixth semester average that we've been given by Stafford. They should be the same, but I not guarantee that they'll be exactly the same. Stafford has increased their tuition by 6.5%. In addition to that, your FTEs did increase. So that is resulting in two different increases. So if you look at the Stafford tuition line, which would be on page 6, you'd see the first, you see there's two lines. There's the on behalf payment, which is a payment that's made by the state directly to Stafford. And then there's the vocational tuition line, which is right underneath that. Again, this is page 6, right at the middle of the page. The first line, just in case you haven't found it yet, is $39,882. So that's an increase of about $12,000. And then our portion is $33,311, which is an increase of $77,33. The state piece also has an offsetting revenue. So if you go to the first page of revenues, that would be page 2 of your budget, and it's that middle section at the top there from state to tech center. So you can see the increase there too, that offsets the expense. So you do have a total increase in expense of about $20,000, but the total increase to education spending is only about $8,000. It's just that one line. Any questions on that? Like I said, I don't imagine a significant change once we get the state numbers. Once I do, if there is any small change, I will have to update these numbers. And typically, if we've approved the budget before I get those numbers, it's usually a very minor adjustments. I'll have to take the money from somewhere else. And it's usually only a couple $100, if anything. But these numbers need to match whatever the state gives us. So after that update, you think if they had a match what the state gives us, they'd give us the numbers a little earlier in the process. But so after that update, we're looking at total expenses of $5,782,862.10. It's an increase of 6.81%. And then total education spending is an increase of 7.81%. After the budget, page 9 is the tax rate sheet. So we put the education spending into the tax rate calculation. We take equalized pupils, which thankfully for Wells Springs is up by 2.67% this year. So which amounts to about almost 7 pupils. It gives you an education spending of $20,135 per pupil. That's a 5% increase. That number then gets divided by the yield of $15,479, which is the tax commissioner's recommendation, to get the unified tax rate for the district, which is $1.30. We then look at each
town individually and look at their CLA data. So Middletown CLA came in at 85.67. And so they had a ending tax rate of $1.51, almost $1.52, which is a almost 4-cent decrease. Wells had a CLA of 83.04, which gave them an ending tax rate of $1.56, almost $1.57, which is a decrease of approximately 4 cents from last year. Both CLAs were approximately a 7% decrease from last year.
Louis, if I read the CLA thing correctly, if the CLA is below 85, then the town needs to do a reappraisal. Did I read that correct? And if Wells has to do that, will that impact things for us?
It's always been below 80, unless they change that.
I want to say I read in the letter today on the tax website that it's below 85 for the CLA and more than 20% for the acronym, and Middletown was 18 something.
It says a CLA below 85% or over 115. So that's really not, we have to do. That's the town listers would get the same information, and that's something that they would initiate. So based on this CLA data, the Middletown falls just above that, but Wells is falling below that, so that they may be looking at that already.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, yay, when I saw the Middletowns. I didn't get a chance to pull Wells's.
Yeah, that used to be 80%. I wonder, 80 and 120. I wonder if they changed that recently. So that's the tax rate in a nutshell, and the budget. I mean, in reference to the public comment earlier, I mean, the only way that you would be able to show a tax rate increase that I would recommend would be to use less of the surplus as revenue and ask the taxpayers to put that into a capital maintenance fund. So you're putting money away for another day. Right now, this budget includes $182,000 in surplus as a revenue. So what that means is that, yes, you are bringing down the tax rate by that $182,000, but when we look at next year's budget, if we don't have that same $182,000 surplus to put into the budget, then we're automatically starting with a decrease in revenues and affecting our tax rate negatively. So if we were to say put $100,000 of that into a reserve fund, away for capital maintenance, then it softens the blow next year if we don't have as large of a surplus. And if we have any major projects, then we have money put away for another day.
Question. Capital maintenance, that means that has to go to sort of like infrastructure. It can't go supplies, et cetera. It can't go towards teacher salaries.
Correct. It's usually capital projects, a roof, heating systems, HVACs, anything.
Of which we have plenty, right? Don't we have a lot of needs? It wouldn't be hard to spend that between our two old buildings if we had to,
Correct.
right?
And typically, what we budgeted this year was like what, 30,000?
We have, each school has $35,000 in the budget for repairs.
Okay.
And then there is a third line for $35,000 for Wells Springs repairs, which is shared between the two schools. And so each school accesses their own pot first, and then if they've exceeded that, then they just communicate based on priorities, determine who's going to spend that money or share the money.
So if we were squeezed next year, we could possibly use the 100,000 we sort of saved today or at the ballot.
Use it during the year.
Yeah.
We can't use it in the budget process.
Okay.
Once that money goes into that reserve fund, it's there unless we ask the taxpayers to take that back and put it into the budget. I mean, we don't have to ask the taxpayers to spend it, but we can't just move it back in as a revenue or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd have to put it on the taxpayers as a vote on it too.
We'd have to ask the taxpayers, yes, to put it into the capital maintenance fund. There would have to be a ballot item.
But if we were to put it in this year and then we would need to make a cut next year, we could then not budget for the capital maintenance next year and have the surplus in the account already? Or am I misunderstanding?
So if we needed to cut the budget next year, I mean, the putting the money into the capital maintenance is a one-time thing. So there's nothing to cut there. It won't happen next year unless you ask the taxpayers again to do it. However, if you put $100,000 in now, and next year we needed to lower the budget, you have that money as a safety net. You could potentially lower your repairs lines in wells, springs.
That's what I was thinking of. Yes.
Option. In addition, you're lowering that surplus that you're using as revenue. So you're sort of softening that blow now, so that if next year you have the same surplus next year of $180,000, which I don't know, it's all going to depend on secondary tuition. That's the one thing that really drives your surpluses. Then you'll have additional revenue on top of this year if you didn't use it all this year.
What, if we took that money out and used it for capital maintenance, what would be the increase to taxpayers at the ballot? Like $30 per 100,000?
I could tell you in a minute.
Cool.
So right now, each town is looking at approximately 4-cent decrease, which is $40, approximately $40 per $100,000 of assessment. And if you were to take 150,000 out, just to throw a number out, tax rate would be up about half a penny in Middletown and up about a quarter of a penny in Wells.
How much was that again? The amount?
That was based on 150,000.
150.
100,000 puts Middletown down still about almost a penny, a little less than a penny, and puts Wells down about 1.2 pennies.
All right. I did have a question. I don't see usually we have like a separate page for the food service. Since this is this budget is basically doesn't have any cuts in it. I don't see food service.
You didn't have a 10th page, the last page for food service. It would be the very last page. No, even after the tax rate.
No.
And I can go make copies of this, so I can just tell you the data. There's no cuts here. Right now, the food service program is cost. We're being subsidized by the general fund by $92,000. $92,556.94. That's my estimate.
I kind of thought that was supposed to be out of the budget. Where, I thought that was decided last time, that we weren't having the food budget put in that way.
There was no decisions at the last meeting. They said they would wait to after the community forum to make decisions.
Okay.
Yeah, this budget is just basically essentially with no cuts in it. And that's what we're talking about now. And you know, we've been talking about these cuts in the last few meetings, and we've heard from several members from the public. And, you know, now would be a good time to talk about, you know, from everyone, which way they want to go as far as what cuts, if any, you would like to see in this budget. You know, if we do make cuts, we'll probably, if we do decide to make cuts, we'll probably have to come back with another version that we'll look at of the budget in another meeting. So
I thought the decision for the budget needed to be dealt with at this meeting tonight. That was what Lewis discussed, that we were going to finish the final decision on the budget tonight. So I thought the food thing was kind of discussed as being taken out.
Yeah, and it's like what Lewis said, you know, the community forum.
I mean, my recommendation would be that we approve the budget tonight. I mean, if there's cuts that you're gonna make, I can make them here in front of me and just give you a new number. I just think delaying it. I mean, we have other budgets to finalize and get town reports and annual reports ready. It'd just be nice to say Wellsprings is done and be able to move forward with the other ones and start getting reports ready.
Okay.
I mean, we've been talking about the same cuts now for 3 months, so it's just, I think it's time to make a decision and move forward.
All right. Open for discussion.
I think we discussed that the food program would be taken out and leave the rest the way it was.
We did discuss that previously, you know, but again, you know, we had some additional input last night. So I don't know how the board feels in terms of what cuts should be made. And so, you know, that's where we're at. So, I mean, if we got to go around the room, I'll start calling on people. I do agree. We need to make a decision tonight on which way to go. So
I can go first.
sure.
Could I, what,
Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, sure. So, given the information about potential yield not impacting tax base at all, taxpayer in terms of education, I would vote not to cut anything. I also like the idea of creating this capital maintenance fund in addition. So that's the way I'm leaning.
Okay.
I think further down, there could be some creative solutions when we're looking, and I think we need to look at this deeper next year about, you know, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, what we do.
And what do you think an amount for the capital maintenance fund?
I would start at 150 to give us a little buffer for next year.
All right, Sue.
what was discussed last night or brought up that apparently I did not know about during some of the community forum or something that you had?
Yeah.
Okay, what was brought up during that?
Basically, we heard from the communities, people who attended and spoke up. Most people who did speak up were in favor of leaving the budget uncut. they were in favor of the programs as they stand.
Okay,
So-
where were they from?
Um,
Were they all Middletown, Pontley, or Middletown and
Well-
Wells, or was it a mix, or do we have an idea?
I mean, I don't really think that matters, honestly,
Yeah, it
but
does.
They're all from Wells Springs.
yeah, that's a good way to.
All right.
You know, we had, 40 some odd people virtual, and a couple people came in person. So, yeah. But anyway, I guess.
Well, I would be totally in favor of getting rid of the food program and the amount that goes into for the general budget or the thing. It's not a big consideration for me. Whatever amount they could assign, it's fine. But I think you ought to cut the food program. You're gonna screw yourself if you don't.
Okay, thank you. George?
I would, again, based on having as close to the final numbers as we're gonna get, and the feedback from last night and the survey, I would say, no cuts this year. I like the idea about investing in the maintenance fund. I would pick 100K myself, which still leaves, a reduction in the rates. Well, last thing, like Matt said, I think we need to look early at what we're gonna be doing in the next few years too.
All right.
So,
Yeah, I agree. No cuts. I think creative solutions are in order. I think cutting just the Middletown program is inequitable, if that's a word. We need to look at that more holistically. I think the program ought to be used more holistically. I'm a little disappointed that it's devolved to what it has, because it was used in both schools at some point to a certain extent, and I'd love to get back to that. Excuse me. I do think it's important to put some money away. A 100 or 150 is fine. I'm not sure of where to go there yet.
Amanda?
Hi. I'm also in favor of just presenting the budget with no cuts, and if we run into an issue, we can reevaluate. I'm also fine with 100 or 150 in the capital maintenance fund. However, I would like to continue to look at these 3 bullet items as well as some other areas in the near future to better prepare ourselves for next year. I think now that we've had these big discussions, we should continue talking about them and come up with a better plan for the future. But after last night and hearing, plenty of opinions, I think that we should present it the way it is and readdress if we run into an issue.
All right, thank you. Cara?
I would move forward with presenting the budget with no cuts, and I'm also fine with 100 or 150 into capital maintenance. I would also echo Amanda's sentiment, especially about the after-school program. I feel like that's money we're leaving on the table, even if we just shift to a partial family-funded opportunity. Like I think that's money we're leaving on the table. It's a resource that would be funded by the people who access it. So just either, no matter which way, I feel like we should continue to explore shifting cost to families a little bit more for that specific one.
Number one. You said?
well, we're going on in the future, not now.
Right. Well, I actually share the same thought, as far as, all these programs. I think looking at them individually, and really just seeing, I guess the best way to describe it would be to look into refine how each one works, and look for potential cost savings there too. I don't know. It's the more we talk about it, the more we see that nothing's changed since the merger. Everything's pretty much relatively stayed the same. So, okay, all right. So I guess.
Can I
Okay.
ask a question? So these three things that we had on top, it was the food, the transportation, and the after-school program, correct?
Yes.
So if we go through and it's voted and it fails, you just eliminated the food program as being an issue because you don't got the contract now and you just screwed yourself with that. And now you're going to eliminate transportation, which is really weird because of the way Wells is set up, because of the distance people are traveling, and a major source of childcare for people after school are the two places you'd have to start cutting or find something else. So really, you're only putting those two things on the table for a change by leaving the food program and not making a decision on that tonight. Am I right? Because I believe that's what Lewis said that had to be dealt with. So technically, the food program's not even a consideration if the budget doesn't pass. You're only taking it from the other two things, right? So I don't think that's fair without making a logical decision and thinking you got only two things you're taking from, not three.
Yeah.
And the food program was the easiest one. It made the most logical sense.
Because you would need
You
that
need to know that.
decision tonight to make the RFP and right. I can't remember if I asked this before, but usually at like the GRCSU level, we'll see price per meals and stuff like that. And I had asked before, like, why is Wells on here? We have our own food program, and it was basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, the response was that if Wells decided to enter this, that's what the price would be. So
We set consistent meal price across the issue just
okay,
for consistency, simplicity. I mean, why would a meal cost more in Wells than it would cost in Poultney?
all right,
That's just the thought process.
all right. So I guess if the board decides not to go down the food service path, there's no way to really.
Well, I mean, even if you adjusted your meal prices, it would have, in today's environment, no impact because all meals are free. So the state is setting the subsidized rate. So your meal price is only based on second meals, which I don't even know if your elementary schools really have any or offer any. It's more bigger schools or high schools for secondaries. And then the adult meal price, which still it's very limited. So meal prices in a universal meal environment have very little to no impact.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, I was just thinking that, if hypothetically the budget does fail, like if we go with the budget with no cuts, there's no way to cross this bridge again for the
Food service is off the table after tonight.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify.
So how many years is that?
5 years.
5 years.
We do 1-year contracts with 4 renewals for a maximum of 5 years. And due to the work that's involved, I wouldn't go out to bid unless we had a problem with the vendor.
Okay.
Is there, oh, sorry, Amanda.
Oh, go ahead, Amanda.
No, Meredith had her hand up first.
Oh, Meredith, go ahead. You're muted.
Just wanted to remind you guys that last night, we had voters tell us that they wouldn't vote for the budget if the meal program was gone.
Yep.
Kind of an important issue. If we don't have our school community voting, that's when the vote goes down. The only time the budget hasn't passed in Middletown Springs is when a significant number of people in our school community didn't vote because I would imagine they assumed the school budget always passes. The no's come out every time. The yeses are the hard ones to get out.
Amanda?
I was just going to add, even if we miss the food opportunity tonight, which I'm fine with missing, when we look at transportation, we aren't looking at getting rid of transportation as a whole. We potentially still have that $45,000 or whatever that we can look at by going to one bus instead of two. So it's not the 70,000 that the food service offers, but it's 45 that we can still work with and still transport our students to and from school just on one bus instead of two. So I don't want us to feel like we're completely out of options because we never said that we were getting rid of transportation. It was just revamping.
Okay. All right, so the capital maintenance fund. I think a lot of people are in favor of that. How would we? Well, I guess the first thing would be 150 or 100,000.
My recommendation would be if you're gonna do something that large, that you would do it. So we looked at 100,000, still was a budget decrease, 150,000 was a budget increase. I think it's always nice to say when in your flyers and stuff like that, and in your PR, it's better to say you have a tax rate decrease than an increase, whether it's a penny or half a penny or whatever the number is. It's always better to say your tax rate's down rather than the tax rate's up, because that's, I mean, people might stop there rather than seeing how much it's up. So, I mean, I would make that amount enough so that the tax rate is still down, even if it's only down quarter of a penny, half a penny. And just one other thing I just want to caution, I mean, all of these discussions, we are banking on the legislators not using that surplus on anything then other than the ed fund, and that yield coming in at 15,479. So if they use half of that surplus and that yield cuts in half, we will be looking at a tax rate increase.
Oh, yeah. When was the last time they did something opposite to the?
Last year. Last year there was $100 million surplus.
Yep.
And they used a third of it for the ed fund, and a third of it for universal meals, and a third of it for other programs. So they didn't use the whole surplus.
Right. Originally, they announced that it was going to be wasn't just going to be for like career technical schools, and then the
That's
rest.
what the other third was that, and I think there was one other component to it.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if they had said that initially that they were going to spend it also. Okay. Well,
I think the other thing that happens too at the state level is that so the state comes out with this big yield, and districts like us who were planning on cutting, we were planning on cutting our budget to keep our tax rate down, and see this huge yield come in and say, well, we no longer have to cut because the tax rate's down. And so what the state is using as an estimate of education spending going up, I know last year they were off by I think 1 or 1.5%. That could change. So the yield number is based on an 8.5% education spending increase, which is a very large number, but I mean we're getting pretty close to that at 7.8. So, but if districts that were planning on cutting now say we're not going to cut anymore because of this huge yield, and then that yield number changes because education spending is now at 10.5%, then that's going to affect the yield. I just want you to have, I'm not trying to sway you in any way. I just want you to have all the facts so that if that yield number changes, you are making an educated decision.
so if they did decide to if they did decide to change the yield, how much of a change would affect if I don't know,
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to answer that question. I mean, the yield has always changed from what they've told us. Luckily, the last few years, it's gone higher than what they've initially told us. And that may happen here if the education spending comes in less than 8.5%. I couldn't even tell you. It's just it's a total guess. To try to anticipate what the legislators are going to do, and what 60 other issues are going to do in the state, it's too hard. It's almost like trying to guess on what boards are going to do.
Very true. Okay. Okay, so I don't know. I having said that, I don't know. I'm a little, I guess more wary with a capital maintenance fund that we can only use for certain things, correct? I mean, if we had a capital maintenance fund for, 150,000 or 100,000, we would offset that in the budget, right?
In future budgets if we needed to.
Right. In future budget. So, I mean, this is going to help us potentially, in the coming years, but we can only use it for the maintenance projects, unless we ask, for it back. So I don't know.
But I think the capital maintenance project fund is a great idea. I mean, it's you're putting money away. It's on days when you have extra money in your pocket, like today, you're putting it away for when you don't, and you can use it in a number of ways. So, I mean, next year for running a deficit, you can not use any of your local repairs line and use the capital maintenance fund. Or if you need to end next year with a bigger surplus, so even in this year with a bigger surplus, so that when we're looking towards FY25, then we can utilize that capital maintenance fund instead of using the local budget. So that's one way. And then obviously, if we've already expended all of the local budget, then we have that on top of that. So I wouldn't question the need for the capital maintenance fund. I think that's definitely something you will use either immediately or in the next couple of years.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I can think of a few things right now.
It's also something we can take out of the budget if the budget failed.
No.
No, you can't.
If the budget fails and the capital maintenance passes, then
Well-
that is set.
Right, but it's not necessarily likely to happen that way. To say yes to one and not the other.
Happened before.
What, that a surplus into a maintenance fund passed and the budget didn't? Not sure that's ever happened.
Okay. All right. So, what would you need would we just need to?
If you're looking to move forward tonight, I can give you the number to put into the motion for the expense, and then we would need a separate motion to put an extra item on the ballot with that amount that you decide on.
Okay. Amanda?
Lewis, would 125 give us an increase, or would that still keep us at a decrease? Is 100 kind of our max to still keep it at a decrease?
125 is still a slight decrease. It's 1/10 of a penny for Middletown and 1/2 penny for Wells.
Okay.
Do we have language about what projects we have in the queue for capital maintenance to articulate why we would be asking for this? I mean, we have our maintenance budget, but I don't know if that goes on the warning or it goes in the letter that accompanies I don't know where that information goes, but
Well, for
maybe
Middletown-
George, you're the you're the chair of that committee, or
Go ahead.
Just for Middletown Springs, you know, we have an old furnace, definitely needs some heating system upgrades. A big thing is just maintenance on the 100-plus-year-old building. And there is a point where, you know, things go bad pretty fast. So,
Yeah, so the facilities committee has talked about this. We do have like Scott Hathaway, our facilities director, has like a list of you know, housekeeping items and maintenance items, but you know, other things have come up, like the tower on top of Middletown Springs, the front of Wells Village School has got wet rot and dry rot, and you know, so that's why I made that comment. Like I can think of a few things right now.
There's the
I mean, there was water coming down between the addition and the original building in Middletown, like what, 6 weeks ago? I saw Rick mopping up the floor in the basement.
it is that special occasion when you have the horizontal rain, and so fortunately it doesn't happen very often. But we have had that looked at between the painters, and it's just, there is something, and roofers, and still have not discovered why it's happening. So
I was gonna say, isn't there like a PCB inspection that's coming that
It's not
individuals,
until summer 2024 for
but we'll be on the hook for remediating that, seems
20%
20%.
right now.
Okay. So that could be a big expense that we could pocket today to pay forward in the future.
You know, I wouldn't. PCB is going to change over the next year or so. I think
Okay.
as they're going to start to look at the cost, because even, you know, looking at the cost of remediation and mitigation, it's just, you know, they tell you look at 20% of remediate, but then we don't know where the funding's going to come from mitigating, and so they're still trying to figure that out. So I you know, that's nice, but I would really look at more of building-based issues to focus on, because we don't know what's going to happen with the next year or two, because I think it's going to become more and more of an issue. But yeah, and that could change with each legislative session too, year to year. So
Yeah, with Act 66 and the lead testing, there was a lot of you know, advocacy on the state paying for the remediation for that, and they eventually changed it. So hopefully it'll be the same for PCB. And but yeah.
But we've got plenty of projects without that.
Okay. All right. So all right. So I think what I'm hearing is the capital maintenance fund is a go. So does anyone have any you know, opposition to 150,000 for the capital maintenance fund?
Yeah, I would, I'm gonna walk back to the 150 because I like the optics of having no increases. So I would say 125 or lower.
Okay. 125. Amanda, didn't you say 125 earlier?
Yeah, that's what I was raising my hand to say. That beat me to it. I'd say 125 since Lewis confirmed that's not an increase.
All right, George.
I'll go with the 125.
Okay. Is everyone else content with the 125? Awesome. Okay. All right.
Do you need a motion for that, Eric? Or can we just put it in since we discussed it?
No, we would need a motion for the budget and a separate motion for the capital maintenance fund.
I'll make a motion to put 125,000 in the capital maintenance fund.
All right. All right, motion by Amanda. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand. Any opposed?
What are we voting on? Is it the budget? Is it the budget or the
Capital maintenance fund.
I don't care. It's fine.
Is that a yes or a no?
It's fine. Yes.
All right, motion carries. All right, and then for the budget, I think that changes that's going to change the,
Use of the surplus. Is that what you're talking about?
yes.
It's $5,782,862.10.
5,782,862.
Yep.
All right, and 10 cents. All right. So we'd be looking for a motion to approve the budget of $5,782,862.10.
I'll make that motion.
All right, motion by Matt. Is there any other discussion?
If we're voting on the budget, I think you're making a big mistake without taking something out. I think you put it down to taking what people need for the childcare afterwards and transportation. Even if it's one bus can't do what else. I know Amanda may think so, but it's not going to do it. So, and you take the food program, keeping that in there, you just eliminated that. So you got your 2 points of cut, and I think you're going to pay for it. So I would definitely vote no.
Okay. All right. Understood. All right, all those in favor? Please say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One opposed. All right, motion carries. All righty.
As far as the after school stuff goes, I mean, if we're leaving that unchanged, I would make a recommendation that we move the after school program to a separate fund, so that we could better manage what the total cost is,
Mhm.
and put all the revenues and expenses into that fund and work on coming up with a more reasonable pricing schedule and trying to at least offset some of our costs for the future, and then we can kind of get a better idea as we're going ahead what it's costing us each month, and when we're looking at next year's budget, if we need to tweak our budget at all, we can. But by having it secluded in its own account fund, and then we can just, at the end of the year, that fund will be negative, most likely. We can just do a subsidy from the general fund to that fund to fund the program. But we can get a better idea of our costs and our revenues if we have that secluded in a separate fund. And I can work with the administrators on costs and revenues and making sure that's all going to the right places and
Okay, so one budget or one account for both schools, basically.
I think it'd be better if we had them separate so that we can, because their programs are a little different. They have different number of students.
Okay.
And then in the general fund budget, when we look at next year's budget, we'll have one line item that'll say after school program transfer, sort of like we have the food service. So in food service, we have all the food service in its own fund. We have all the revenues, all the expenses, and then in the general fund, we just have one line item that's a subsidy transfer. And so it'll be the same thing with after school program, where we have that all in its own funds. All the people are coded directly to that fund, and then we just have the one line item in the general fund that says subsidy transfer, and then we transfer that amount, and hopefully we'll work on bringing that number down for next year and for the following years as we work on getting our staffing in place accurately and our revenues accurate, and billing and all that stuff.
Makes sense to me. So it would look like, just like another,
The page for food service eating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The page that's missing.
Yeah.
Alright.
But it would look like this budget, but it would be a separate fund.
All right, I think that sounds reasonable, but you don't need the board to,
No, I don't need a motion, just a consensus. That's the board thinks is good, that would idea. And
Yeah, I mean-
working with the administration to set rates that are.
Yeah.
um,
all right, I'm sorry. It's not making that noise whenever someone raised their hand. So Cara,
Amanda was first.
okay, Amanda.
Louis, I was just wondering if you thought it would also make sense then to do a summer program, something separate for the summer program, or if that would be included in the after school program, since both of those kind of share some similarities.
Well, currently the summer program is being funded through grant funds with ESSER, so it is managed separately. But when summer programs do come back to Wellspring's budget, then yes, we should have that discussion. I think that's going to be a bigger discussion because we're really going to need to look at what that program is going to look like and whether we're going to maintain a similar program and whether there's going to be a cost for that. But I think we have another 2 years before we need to really nail that down because we do have 2 more years of grant funding. But yes, we'll talk about that more in the future.
Cara,
Yeah, I would support transitioning it to a different account just so we can have accurate information. I think a pretty large number of the folks who access after school care in Middletown are eligible for subsidy, even if they're not aware of it. Just like the high rate of foster and adoptive children that we have in our system, all of those folks get full subsidy. Like, there are a lot of ways to access. And again, I think it's money we're leaving on the table. So if we can get accurate information to make a plan, I would support that.
Okay. So a random question, because I noticed sometimes on the student activity funds that there's like after school snacks for Middletown on there. Is that sort of separate funded? Or
Yeah, so that's something I would change with this shift. So right now, Middletown puts their after school subsidies and all payments actually, I think, into the student activities after school program fund. And then they use that fund to pay for their supplies and snacks and stuff like that. So, but if we're going to be managing this all in its own fund, that would all shift and all the revenues and all the expenses would come out of this one fund. There'd be no need for it to go to student activities anymore.
all right.
So can I ask what plan B is if the budget doesn't pass since we eliminated stuff?
Well, plan B would be to meet and discuss it.
And where you planning those 2 cuts to be at? Transportation and childcare.
So my recommendation, if the budget's been passed, I think we'd have to reconvene as a board. We have to look at doing community polling, and really look at the good feedback and then revisit where additional cuts be made as opposed to just these 2. I think we look at, everything's opened up, back up.
Right. So that means everything opens up as far as teachers and stuff like that start getting cut if the budget doesn't pass because we.
You could look at personnel,
Okay.
extracurricular programs, things along those lines. So that'd be my advice, that we not just be limited to just these 2 items, that because based on exit polling, community polling, you may find that some people voted the budget down because for one reason or another. So it's not just around these 2 items. So that's something which.
Okay, so I just want to make it clear that if the budget doesn't pass, we've eliminated the easy one. And it could come down to personnel being kicked off.
There's always that possibility.
There's a better possibility of that. Okay, just
Well,
want
when you look at budgeting, 80%
I know.
budget
I know. I
is
just want to make this
personnel,
clear and make it
correct.
known that you're now starting to look at people being dismissed and not a food program. There's just want to make that out there.
That is possible, correct.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Amanda?
Do we know, Louis, how many students one bus holds? Just out of curiosity, not to get into a deeper conversation, just How many students can you fit on one bus?
Depends on whether high school students or elementary. I'm looking at Sue as a bus driver, I think 60 something.
60 for the little ones, 47 for adults.
Okay, thank you.
You're not looking at as far as number of students on a bus. When you're doing a one bus, you're looking at time, and you're looking at road conditions at certain times and places. So that has to be the major consideration, because the number of kids, the more kids you have on a bus, the worse it is. And that's for one driver, no aid, and bad road conditions. You're adding your safety. It's unbelievable. So, and Wells is not exactly your prime area to be driving.
All right. All right. So if there's no other discussion on the budget, we'll move on. But before I do, Heather, I've seen your hand up, and I know you weren't on during public comment. So if you want, we'll take a few minutes, and if you have something to say, I think now would be a good time. Probably got a minute. All right. Well, I'll give her another opportunity later in the meeting, because I noticed she came on right after public comment, so I feel bad. But all right. All right. Thanks, everyone. So board operating protocols, there's a revision based off our last meeting. That language that George suggested is in there.
I raised my hand like 20 minutes ago, so I don't even remember why.
Okay. Well, I guess if you remember, you can put your hand back up, and we'll give you the opportunity to speak. All right. All right. Any discussion on the board operating protocols as far as the new language? I'm trying to find it here. When I was looking at this, I think the language that you suggested is kind of similar to number 2, but maybe there might be a way to, like, I don't know, just combine them in a way where,
I think we talked about maybe doing that. And
yeah. Yeah, I think we did talk about that, but I just wanted to, we didn't talk about exactly what we would add in there. So, and that's why I just added it.
as a separate.
Yeah. Just to kind of see it visually. And I know it, something like this, it really needs to make sense. And, I think it'd be great that if the full board can come to an agreement on it. My thought is that, as we work on this, the last several months, almost maybe, that it's something that we can adopt, during reorganization. So if anyone has any suggestions to change, add, strike, that would be the time.
I would strike it because it's similar to 2. There's no need to add more.
Okay.
I'm sorry, so I couldn't hear you. Can you say that again?
I said I would eliminate 19. 2's very similar to that. You don't need to have an extra one.
Any thoughts on the striking number 19?
I mean, I think if we want to treat this as a living document that gets revisited every election cycle, I'm fine with striking it. I mean, based on stuff that happened in the last 18 months, there was things that happened that fall under the, description of number 19.
Kind of
So,
why I wanted it.
so it's not like it's unheard of because it happened.
Yep.
But I think to start out, let's not plan for the exception. Let's plan for the general. And if it needs to be revisited, it will with the next board when they're seated after the election.
I feel like it should be included. It does address what seems like a specific situation, but it to me seems much more comprehensive than 2 alone. 2 does not define the direct assault isn't the right word, but obstruction is a key word in number 19 that isn't into.
Okay. Yeah, I thought, maybe adding, and this was like a month ago when I was looking at this. But just the way it's worded, you would end up putting pretty much the whole thing in number 2. So, all right. Well, I think we don't have to make a decision tonight. Like I suggested, it's something that we've been working on, and we're not going to spend hours on it every board meeting. And it gives board members time to look it over carefully. We'll have it, it'll probably be on again in the next meeting, and then if we have no other changes, potentially adopt it during reorganization, if everyone's fine with that. All right. All right. Thank you. Okay. Town meeting. Okay.
Excuse me. So what I would ask the board to make a decision on tonight is with regard to the annual meeting, which is held March 1st, is to whether or not this will be strictly in person or if the board would like to offer a hybrid option. I spoke with Will Sang, who's the executive director of the elections office, state of Vermont, and we can offer both options. But if we are to offer a hybrid option, on the warning, we'd have to place both an in-person location as well as a virtual link. And then we'd have to remind any virtual attendees that they will be recognized as passive participants, which means that they will be allowed to ask questions, make comments, but they will not be allowed to vote for the floor. Now, obviously, there are certain items, particularly on budget, and then this new article that will be, as well as the election of some school board officers that we push back to Australian ballots. But I think, the moderator, the clerk, and the treasurer typically what we vote from the floor on that date. So really, I think at this time, we just need to know if the board would like to do a strictly in-person meeting or a hybrid, and then we can adjust the warning as such.
So yeah, we did talk about this, and that was something that didn't come up. I do support the hybrid meetings. As we've seen last night, we had more people attend virtually than in person. But I do have a concern that if we did our annual meeting with the virtual option and most of the participants showed up virtually and maybe a few people showed up in person or none at all, what happens then? Like, how do you vote from the floor if no one shows up? So, my thought would be to just have it strictly in person, just because of that. So that's my thought. Anyone else have opinions?
I'd
One of
rather
the-
have,
Given that one of our themes of community engagement is transparency, I feel like as long as we're clear that folks can't vote if it's hybrid, and I thought we already talked about it and agreed to hybrid before this, but that we agreed that all board members would be in person if at all possible. So if all the board members are there, can we not vote? Wouldn't we be able to vote on the treasurer and clerk? So if we're there in
Yeah.
person, we would be able to conduct business, or am I wrong about that?
No, I think you're right. Amanda?
I would be in favor of hybrid just so that the public could attend virtually if necessary. But I would say all board members need to be in person. Like Cara said, I thought that's what we had already decided. But I would hate to not hear from a community member because they couldn't make it in person but would be available to chime in virtually. So I think leaving that door open is important.
So
and
this
we
was
can all
discussed, you are correct, but we had to check with Will Senning to make sure that it was possible. That's why I'm bringing it back, that I spoke with Will yesterday and said that the hybrid is an option. So yes, what we did discuss, but we did not know at that time if whether or not the state would support hybrid, particularly around voting. But the state has, and will work with us on the language that you see in one of the drafts that were sent out. So that's why we're making a full motion. It is backed by the state of Vermont. So.
Oh, okay. Read my line before.
We will not be able to approve a warning tonight because we will have that new article around the capital thing. So then we will have to discuss how we, go back and we'll work through this. But we may need to have just a special meeting, or we may have to look at a carousel meeting as we've done in the past, just to approve warnings.
Yep. Okay.
But the warning you have is everything but the new article item that was just motioned tonight.
Okay. All right. And that's fine. So, so I take it everyone's fine with continuing with the hybrid as planned.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good deal. All right. Warning locations. That's
So really what we just need to know as well is, I know we, during our reorg, we identify where we post agendas and warnings, but I think in the past, we had posted in Rutland Herald, and some of the boards were upset because of the additional cost. And so what we'd ask is, in addition to the normal warning locations, if there's anywhere else that we'd like to post the warnings, or just keep with what we just voted on during reorg.
right. My thought is not to post in the Rutland Herald and post in the Free Press, and with the Front Porch Forum accounts, it can be published on the Front Porch Forum as well. So other than that, I think the warning gets posted at the
School, central office, town office,
and
then we have Lakes Region Free Press.
Like, yeah, like we did.
that's
So in addition, you like Front Porch Forum, that's something which you
Yeah.
have to work with Christina on, okay?
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks.
cool. All right.
So then our goal would be, Lewis and I work on the language around that last article, and then we can get that sent out to you for review, and then we'll look at a meeting date.
Okay.
To approve the warrant.
It would just be like a quick meeting just for that, just like
Correct.
last year. Yeah.
And we only need 24 hours to warn a special meeting, so.
Okay. All right. Sounds great. All right. So Vermont Coalition for Equitable Outdoor Education. So I had invited Laura Derringer. Is that how it's pronounced her name? Derringer. Okay. Sorry. But she's not here tonight, so we're just gonna move on. I haven't heard from her, so I did send. She had requested I send the board information on this, but we'll talk about it more at another meeting, I guess. Policy. We have two policies up for adoption. Yeah, E8. Next. Nah, yeah, I can't pronounce that. Yeah.
Naloxone. It's called naloxone.
Thank you. Administration for opioid overdose and F26 students who are homeless. Yeah, we'd be looking for a motion to adopt these tonight.
I'll make that motion.
All right, motion by George. Any discussion on these two policies? All those in favor of adopting E8 and F26, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Was any yes? Sue?
Yeah.
Okay. Motion carries unanimous. And then E1, F2, and F21 are first reads. Any discussion on these policies? Let's see here. So, really quick, I'm trying to go back to policy committee. F2 was sent back with some suggestion for language changes. Everything's highlighted in red. As usual. And then there's no changes to F21. So nothing on the policy. Great. Okay. Well, let me see. We don't have an executive session tonight. Is there any other lawful business? Okay. So
Sorry, I just had a question. Now that we've approved the budget that we want to present, is there another meeting of the community engagement committee to plan get out the vote efforts? I don't know, but we had a lot of feedback from the community last night. So how do we capitalize on that passion to get the budget passed?
I know that's a good agenda item. So would you like that to be on the community engagement committee's agenda?
Yeah, I think it would be timely. Especially given that we went higher today.
Okay. It's a good idea. All right, next meeting, February 1st. Oh, wow. At Wells Village School. All right, if there's no other business, motion to adjourn would be in order.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Amanda. All those in favor of adjourning at 7:20, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Good night.